We're kicking off today with AEW Dynamite, which took an emotional turn this week during an in-ring promo segment between MJF and Jeff Jarrett. MJF made a number of barbs against Jarrett, who was relatively unfazed, even when MJF brought up Karen Jarrett, saying he hopes she stays around after Jarrett retires. MJF went even further, saying that once he's done with her, he'll ship her back to Tennessee, and Jeff will be the first man to know what a generational talent and Olympic gold medalist's testicles taste like. For those of you who may not be aware, this alluded to Karen being first married to Kurt Angle and the messy situation between the pair and Jeff that unfolded in TNA over a decade ago. Jarrett had some fiery comebacks of his own, including calling MJF a leech during their segment and saying that, "I was MJF before you were MJF." In the most heated moment, MJF evoked Owen Hart, claiming that Jeff thinks he's owed a grand finale just because he was best friends with the late wrestler. This rattled the visibly shook Jarrett, who responded with a big right hand to the former AEW World Champion, with security and Jarrett's crew rushing in to break up the brawl. MJF narrowly escaped after nearly clashing with Karen Jarrett, and it was the accusation that he was exploiting his friendship with Hart that caused Jarrett to lose it. Both MJF and Double J have proven themselves on the mic in the past, but this promo failed to miss the mark, as going after a man by insulting his wife is hardly necessary or effective in 2025. The insults about Jeff's wrestling legacy, including MJF saying that Jarrett needed his dad to form TNA to make him a world champion, worked much better than the dig at Karen. Outside of that, this segment went way too long, with Jarrett not delivering a single impactful line, while it felt that only 1 in 5 of MJF's comments made a difference. In concept, this was a good idea and showed that Jarrett could match MJF's heel tactics, but really, the only notable moment was MJF's use of Owen Hart to get under the skin of Double J. In singles action, Christian Cage battled Hook, a match that's been building for some time, with Hook infamously dangling Cage over the stands during the November 12th show. It was Cage's patriarchy that ambushed Taz last year, and while Hook was on a roll and locked Cage in the Red Rum, Kip Sabian and Nick Wayne interrupted to cause a disqualification. Just when it looked like Hook was outnumbered and in trouble, Samoa Joe's music hit to the delight of the crowd, and the former AEW World Champion stormed to the ring. Joe laid waste to the patriarchy and forced them to flee, and this appearance, Joe's first since July of last year, served as a reminder that he is a dominant force whenever he's on TV. Samoa Joe was written off TV after the Canadian Stampede street fight with Chris Jericho, and the reason for this was that so he could film Twisted Metal's second season. Joe portrays the physical role of Sweet Tooth, but with the project's filming now wrapped, fans can expect to see more of Joe in AEW as he's ready to reassert himself as a top star. The question now is what's next for Samoa Joe, as with unfinished business with Chris Jericho and a new dynamic in AEW, the possibilities are endless for high-stakes matches and rivalries. Corey Graves has been a crucial voice on WWE programming for years, but given what's transpired in recent days, his future with the promotion continues to remain uncertain. This week, Graves tweeted his frustrations with his current position in WWE, and after missing this week's NXT, a show he teased having a lot to say on, he's now missed another show. Graves was missing from the latest episode of WWE Speed, which saw Chad Gable facing NXT star Charlie Dempsey, despite Graves being the sole voice of the show since its launch last year. Blake Howard filled in as the play-by-play commentator for the match, only raising further questions about Graves and his current standing in WWE. In his statement earlier this week, Graves shared his issues with his move to NXT, saying that he'd in effect been told that you're not famous enough for your own job. Though he didn't name names, many saw this line as a dig at Joe Tessitore and Pat McAfee, both of whom are established names in broadcasting outside WWE. Graves has since deleted that tweet, and with WWE yet to publicly give an update on Graves' standing, fans remain eager to learn more about what the future looks like for the broadcaster. Back to Dynamite, as this week's Maximum Carnage match saw the first ever women's casino gauntlet, with a title match against Mariah May at Grand Slam Australia awaiting the victor. By winning last week's triple threat match, Chris Statlander was the #1 entrant, and in contrast to WWE's Royal Rumble, this gave the former TBS champion a huge advantage. That's because in the Casino Gauntlet, the first person to score a pin or submission wins the entire match, so talent with a late entry number may see the match end before they enter. Jamie Hayter was number 2, but it was the number 3 entrant Megan Bayne who shocked fans with her surprise appearance, and she received a huge pop from the crowd. Bayne, a star on the Independents, hasn't been in AEW since the days of Dark and Dark Elevation, and her standing has risen considerably since she was on those shows. Her most recent match for AEW before this week had been a Rampage Dark match in 2023, and since then, she's been competing in GCW and on the Independents. Despite the pop for Bane, it was Toni Storm who'd win the match, who rolled up Julia Hart to score the win after Hart accidentally missed it Harley Cameron when Hart had aimed for Jamie Hayter. With this win, Storm has now set the stage for a rematch with her former protege, though the question now is how AEW will present this feud given Storm's new character. Though the pair have plenty of history, that would mean having Storm address her timeless persona, a run her current rookie character seemingly has no memory of. It'll be interesting to see whether AEW references the past between these two or goes in a different direction as we build to the long-awaited rematch at Grand Slam Australia. Jon Moxley and the Death Riders were once again causing trouble during this week's AEW Dynamite, but the group were forced to flee the arena thanks to their heated rivals. On the show, Powerhouse Hobbs challenged Jon Moxley for the AEW World title, a match that came about after Hobbs' victory in the Men's Casino Gauntlet last week. The pair delivered a back-and-forth match, with Hobbs even biting Moxley's ear during the match, and the champion was bleeding profusely. Hobbs was even able to combat the numbers game as Marina Shafir and Wheeler Yuta sought to interfere, but in the end, a Bulldog submission earned Moxley the win. After the match, all the Death Riders arrived to launch a beatdown on Hobbs, but as they were about to shatter Hobbs' surgically repaired knee, rated FTR came to make the save. This led to the Death Riders retreating as tensions between the two sides continued to escalate, ahead of an inevitable title clash between Moxley and Cope in the near future. This week's Dynamite took place at the Andrew J. Brandt Music Center, and this smaller venue looked great on TV and gave the show an intimate feel. During the show, the Learning Tree presented a New York Minute in which Jericho vowed that he and Jon Moxley will be on the same page during the 12-person tag match on Collision. The alliance between the Learning Tree and the Death Riders has received a lot of criticism from fans, and this segment did little to address why the two sides are actually teaming up. Instead, it saw Jericho make a couple of childish insults at Rated FTR in a segment that failed to address one of the biggest issues fans have with AEW's current top storyline. In his first match in an AEW ring since December 2023, Kenny Omega returned to action to take on Brian Cage during this week's Maximum Carnage Dynamite. Despite being outmatched in terms of size, Omega was able to turn the tide, and after several V-triggers, he hit a one-winged angel to score the win. Omega's work was exceptional, so much so that you'd think he never left, but after the match, he was ambushed by the Don Callis family. Will Ospreay came down to make the save, but Konosuke Takeshita came out, and the numbers advantage was too much, and the Callis family left after leaving Ospreay and Omega laid out. The clear expectation is that Omega and Ospreay will need to team up, likely against Kyle Fletcher and Takeshita, in a match that will fit right at home on the Grand Slam Australia card. There was plenty of huge names at this week's AEW Dynamite Maximum Carnage show, but one of the most notable names remained behind the scenes. PW Insider reports that Scott D'Amore was backstage at this week's show, despite reports that he's currently part of negotiations with WWE. D'Amore was ousted from TNA by Anthem last year, a move that came after Scott played a pivotal role in the relaunch, and his exit spawned a backlash among fans and wrestlers. It was last November that D'Amore was spotted at the Performance Center in Orlando, fueling speculation that he'd be joining WWE, potentially as part of NXT alongside Shawn Michaels. Whether his appearance at Dynamite is a sign of things to come, time will tell, but Scott D'Amore is certainly a name that both promotions would benefit from having full time. Over to NXT now, as this week's show saw TNA Knockouts World Champion Masha Slamovich in attendance, and she shared some choice words after the show with Cora Jade on Twitter. This has left fans wondering as to whether we'll see Slamovich compete in an NXT ring, and the champ met with Shawn Michaels after the show. In footage shared by WWE, Slamovich thanked Michaels for having her and said she vowed to defend the TNA Knockouts title against the very best and liked what she saw in NXT. Michaels reminded Slamovich that he's only a phone call away, as the segment clearly teased that Slamovich could soon be in an NXT ring, potentially with the TNA Knockouts title on the line. During the title reign of Jordynne Grace, she defended the Knockouts title in NXT one time back in September against Sol Ruca, and could Slamovich follow in her footsteps? Time will tell. We've got an update on the Tammy Sytch case now, as the disgraced WWE Hall of Famer is requesting for her prison stay to be shortened. The Volusia County Clerk of Circuit Court updated their court record on January 13th, which shows that Sytch sent a letter to Judge Karen Foxman, who presided over Sytch's November 2023 sentencing. In the letter, Sytch asked for her current sentence to be changed so that instead of serving each charge independently, she'd serve them concurrently. Sytch's current 17-year sentence will have her behind bars until September 2039, but this change would mean she'd only serve the longest individual sentence, that being 10.5 years. In her letter, Sytch claims that she had been using her time incarcerated to learn new skills and is working as a teacher's aide and has been speaking as a voice of reason to young offenders. Sytch also claims that she's already got work as a paralegal lined up for when she exits prison, whenever that'll be, and will continue to follow her situation for further updates. Back to AEW Dynamite as the show saw the Hurt Syndicate in trios action for the first time as MVP made his in-ring debut for the promotion alongside Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin. It was last week that the Hurt Syndicate made their intentions to win the tag titles clear, and this week the trio took on the reigning champions Private Party and Mark Briscoe. MVP competed extensively in the match and showed excellent cohesion with his allies, and though Briscoe, Zay, and Quen mounted a comeback, it was the Hurt Syndicate who got the win. As of late, Ricochet has garnered plenty of heat from the AEW fans, so much so that they've been throwing toilet paper at him, and this week the WWE alum had a chance to speak. Standing in the ring during the second segment of the night, Ricochet endured some Swerve's house chants and didn't seem happy, and still had scissors in his jacket pocket. Those were presumably the same scissors he'd used to stab Swerve Strickland in the head with, and the one and only shared a photo on the screen of himself holding a bloody Strickland. Swerve's music hit, but it was Prince Nana who slid into the ring and hit Ricochet with a chair from behind, and Strickland entered after that carrying a chain with him. Ricochet bolted from the ring with Swerve stalking the inaugural Speed champion, and in the end, the one and only exited the building through the snow onto the Cincinnati streets. And that was this week's edition of AEW Dynamite, and while Maximum Carnage was on track to be a massive night, a lull in the middle hurt the show's momentum. Highlights of the show include Kenny Omega's return and the Strickland Ricochet interaction, but Christian Cage vs. Hook and the Hurt Syndicate match didn't click how one would expect. Samoa Joe's return was great, but the real downer of the night was MJF and Jeff Jarrett, as the segment took up so much time that could have gone to the Women's Casino Gauntlet. For how long they took, the pair added relatively little to their ongoing feud, but the Women's Gauntlet and Hobbs, giving one of his best matches to date, ended the show on a high. Fightful Select reported last week that Warner Bros. Discovery pushed AEW that this week's Dynamite needed to be important, and AEW produced this show in response. But what did you make of AEW Dynamite Maximum Carnage? Did the show deliver on what it needed to? Share your thoughts and opinions on the show down in the comments section. Each year, WWE hosts its Hall of Fame ceremony celebrating legends and notable names of the past, but this year, the show could be in store for a major change. In 2024, Paul Heyman was the class headliner, but was inducted first so that The Rock could go on last for his induction of his mother, Ada Johnson. As a result, many fans opted to leave following Heyman's induction, and WWE does not want a repeat of fans walking out of the WWE Hall of Fame ceremony this time around. WrestleVotes reported on Sportskeeda's Backstage Pass that WWE was unhappy with fans leaving and are trying to come up with different ways to present everything going forward. What measures do you think WWE could take to prevent walkouts, and who do you want to see inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame class of 2025? Share your thoughts below. Earlier this month, Bad Bunny claimed that a future Backlash Premium Live event was coming to Mexico, before it was later clarified that this isn't the case at this time. In an update, however, WrestleVotes reported that there is a very high possibility that a PLE will come to Mexico in 2026, though it did not state if it'd be Backlash or a different show. Mexico is a country steeped in wrestling history, but despite this, WWE has yet to host a PLE in the country, instead sticking to live events and a couple of TV tapings back in 2011. With WWE hosting more PLEs outside the US in recent years, it seems that a show in Mexico will come eventually, even if Bad Bunny's claims about Backlash may have been premature. In August 2024, Odyssey Jones arrived on the main roster and aligned with the New Day, but the next month he was fired after assault allegations came to light. Jones has denied the claims against him, but now more has been shared, as a police report obtained by Post Wrestling reveals that Jones's partner accused him of assault in May 2024. This came while Jones was under a WWE contract, with the report alleging that Jones was enraged after discovering text messages between his now ex and another man. Jones's ex claims he threw objects and slammed her into the ground twice and provided photos of bruises to her shoulders and legs that she alleges were caused by him. Jones' former partner adds that following this incident, they went on a Caribbean cruise, during which she was assaulted again, causing bruises and a concussion. She alleges that Jones threw her phone into the sea and restrained her, and in response, Jones has filed a report with the Maitland police, and though they said they have no record of this. Jones has been granted an order of protection, though his ex claims that this was based on misinformation and thanked WWE for taking the allegations seriously. Odyssey Jones has denied the allegations again and announced plans to take legal actions against his ex-partner, and will follow this situation for further updates. As we reported yesterday, Charlotte Flair was backstage at this week's NXT, but she wasn't the only notable woman spotted behind the scenes. Karma Petrovich shared a couple of photos with Mickie James, who will be part of WWE Legends and Future Greats, so fans can expect to see much more of the veteran in due time. And we're ending today with Alexa Bliss, who hasn't competed since the 2023 Royal Rumble PLE, but an update from the Goddess has had fans speculating on a return. On social media, Bliss shared a selfie and revealed she's back to her pre-pregnancy weight after she and Ryan Cabrera welcomed their daughter Hendrix into the world in November of 2023. This update comes amid reports that Bliss's return is on the horizon, with WrestleVotes reporting last week that creative plans are being developed for her comeback. Are you excited for Bliss's return to the ring, and how would you like to see the former women's champion be brought back? Share your thoughts below, and thanks for watching.